What's up, y'all? Chris Coyier here. I want to talk about a relatively new CSS feature called @scope. Like the @ sign. No, we have @media and @starting style. They're called @rules in CSS. This is another @rule called @scope. I say relatively new because the browser support is decent, but maybe not amazing. Here, let me put it into can I use quick. @scope is supported in Chrome and Friends and Safari, but not Firefox yet. But there's this thing called Interop 2025, or it happens every year, and @scope is on that list. It shouldn't be too long till it ships in Firefox, we hope, and then you'll be a little bit more free to use it. It's a pretty neat feature. So I say it's a neat feature. Is it absolutely life-changing in how you are going to write CSS? Probably not, actually. I think of it as a relatively niche feature, but powerful when you need it. And I think there's 3 niche things that it can do. We're going to cover one in this video, and it's going to be called donut scoping. And then we'll do 2 more in 2 subsequent videos. So let's get into @scope basics, and then @scope what donut scope is and why it might be useful. So let's say I have a card here. We're going to look at the basics of it. Maybe we have an image inside of it. I'll use like cool rodeo guy here. Why not? And there's whatever, like a card. Let's give ourselves a little bit more content. Cool rodeo guy. And maybe there's some content. It's obviously lorem ipsum, the finest of all content that we could use for mockups type of stuff. And then we'll say card, and then maybe we'll limit it its size. Max inline size of 300 pixels, just to make it look a little bit more card-like. 1 pix solid gray, a little padding. Okay, and then I have a snippet in CodePen, my center, which just makes the whole body a big grid. Okay, so we need to target that image and pull it inside. Sure, right? So how would we do that in card? We'll use a little bit of nesting. Max inline size of that is 100%, so it's as wide as the card is. And then usually you go display block, that kind of thing. Remove the extra space underneath it because it's no longer an inline element with line height. Cool. So that's a card. We got a card. Good job. We carded ourselves. And now we want to do something else. But first, the absolute basic syntax of @scope looks like this. Instead of .card, I can write @scope. And then I can put card in parentheses. And look at what's going to change in the styles when this re-renders. Absolutely nothing. So that is the syntax, or one of the possible syntaxes for @scope card. Fine, right? It's not really doing anything different whatsoever. It is actually doing a little bit of different stuff, but not in our case, not what we've written so far. It's no different at all. So that's interesting. So note that it's @scope, and then in parentheses is one of the possible syntaxes, a CSS selector within there. Cool. So that's the basic syntax. Probably not blowing your mind just yet, but we'll see if it can do anything interesting. Maybe before these, we'll have like tags, and we'll have 3 anchor links, perhaps. 1, 2, and 3. Just use a little bit of Emmet there to help with us. And then maybe there's a link within this content as well. So we have tags that are links, and we have some body copy link here. So what if they are going to be styled differently? And it's very likely, of course, that they are. How would we do that? So if we're targeting links within the card, we could go like this. A, and then color red. And which ones are going to go red? All of them, right? They're all going to go red because we've targeted all links that are within the card, and that's fine. But let's say we wanted to just make the tags one red. We could go tags A, and make those red. We're using just a bit of CSS nesting, you'll notice here. That's pretty much a feature you can count on fairly broadly. So now these went red and this one didn't. That's a way to kind of scope that. But there's a way that we could express this in a different way that might be useful to us, and we'll play with it a little bit more as we go. So maybe we take this text content, wrap it in a container called content, And then that, like, what does that do? It gives us just another selector to select just this part of the card, but not this part of the card. That's kind of interesting too. So a way that we could express that, like I want to make the ones on the top red, is we could write at scope, we could say the card, and then this is another different syntax for skip to .content. .content. And anytime you see that to keyword in scope, now we're talking about donut scope, we could make the links within that scope color red. And those are going to go red and those aren't. So what's happening there is that I'm going to select this blue area here. That's the stuff that we put within a class of .content. But we are saying select the card and then stop selecting. I sometimes call this the stop caring selector when you get to .content, which is this part. So here's card, select all this stuff, all this stuff, all this stuff. Oop, I hit .content, and now I'm going to stop selecting. I'm no longer going to select anchor links within that area. So we've expressed what we want here, and this is what's called donut scope because it's selecting, follow my mouse here, around the edge of all this until it hits this area, and then it's not going to do it anymore. So it has cut out this middle of the selector. It's the only way you can do that in CSS. There's not some other fancy way that you can write this. Not really this succinctly and clearly. That's what donut scope is, and that's what we've achieved here. Now, I think this kind of makes sense in this card context because I can imagine like this chunk being like just a chunk of markdown in a CMS. You know, you're just writing markdown, yada, yada. It's got lists, it's got figures, it's got block quotes, it's got all this stuff, and that you might have very special styling just for it. And you wanted to do some styling in the .card class that contains it, but you're like nervous that styles might leak down into that markdown area, which already has its own unique styling. So you could just be like, oh, I'll just carefully write my card styles, but I'll scope it and I'll have the donut scope stop at .content. So I'm not leaking styles down into that area. That's like a use case for donut scope. Donut scope is kind of a term coined by Nicole Sullivan back in 2011. She expressed the need for this and had like kind of a media unit that she was describing. So it's taken a long time to go from Nicole's original coining of the term and expression of the need to a web standard, but it has happened. And also thanks to Miriam Suzanne, who kind of brainchilded this and got it all the way through browsers. So pretty cool. That's at scope, the whole feature. All right, so we're continuing to talk about donut scope. I want to talk about it with a little bit more complex of a situation here. Now we have kind of like a news website or possibly a blog or whatever. We've named it Scope, of course. And this is an article page. So it has like a big hero up here. It has, this is the article itself along the left. We have a sidebar with some extra bonus stuff. We have a comments area and a footer down here. Now let's talk about this design a little bit first. What we have here is a link within a paragraph. So within what I'd consider body copy or a .content class that is underlined. And I think it should be underlined. I think that's an accessibility concern, and it just clearly delineates a link as visually looking like a link when there otherwise might be some ambiguity because of just like emphasizing text with a different color or whatever. An underline often just screams it's a link. But here's some navigation along the top here. Notice these links are not underlined. Now, perhaps this is debatable, but I happen to believe that I think there's enough visual affordance in something like the top of navigation of a page that says maybe these don't need to be underlined. Maybe it's obvious enough that they're underlined, and of course they are still anchor links in the HTML and findable that way and have their own hover and focus styles and that sort of thing. The same sort of thing in this trending now section. This clearly exists just to give you a little teaser of what the article is for you to click it and go to the actual article page. I think that's a strong enough visual affordance that perhaps it doesn't need to be underlined. So how do you approach that necessarily? Now there's two different ways we could approach it. There's kind of the, let's just remove them all at first. So one way to do this is text decoration none. And you'd put that on the anchor link just to wipe out all text decorations, because the user agent style sheet, that is that little piece of CSS that browsers apply to naturally to all your content, has decoration underline in it already. So all anchor links are underlined like this if we were to kind of do nothing. They should be underlined. They're not here because we're individually, or they are here actually, because one way to do this is to wipe them all out and then add them back where you want them. So we have a content class that we're using in various places. One of them is on the article itself. Maybe you have an article class for the styling of the article, but you're also delineating it as content. So we could say .content, those links should come back as underlined. So we could remove them all, oops, with none, and then say something like, well, .content, those links have underlines in them. That's one approach that we could have to this. Text decoration underline. That way they're all going to be gone, but this one's going to come back with an underline. Now that is the effect that we want to have there. Wipe them all out and put them back where you want them. Okay. I'd say a little bit more common of an approach is to let them all be underlined and then remove them where you don't want them. So perhaps in the nav links here, the anchor links within it are, actually it looks like there's not scoping being used here. We'd say text decoration none here to remove them from these white links up here. Oh, but there's a logo as well. Maybe that should have text decoration none on it too. So leave them all be underlined and then take them away in places that you want them to be taken away. So where's trending? Can we find that quick? Find trending items. Trending content, text decoration, none on those particular links should pull them off of there. I think that's a little bit more common, is to be like, I don't know, just let links be underlined and let me pluck them away. But there's two opposing approaches there. Take them all away everywhere and put them back where you want them, or leave them be underlined everywhere and take them off where you want them off. That's a fun thing about CSS. You can approach things in two different ways. I think that's kind of cool. But there's a way, I think there's one selector that we could apply that does kind of apply our intention a little bit more clearly. Let's see if we pull off all the approaches for now. We're kind of back to having links everywhere, which is kind of normal. We can think in donut scope, but the donut can be the entire page. So let's write what we mean there. Scope from the body, or the HTML, I guess it wouldn't really matter, to the content area, right? Dot content, anything with a class of dot content. So we're essentially not selecting inside of here, but we are selecting everywhere else. In there, we'll say text decoration none. So now we're going to pull it away from these, pull it away from these, pull it away from these, but leave it because this has a class of .content here. So with one selector, we have kind of expressed exactly what we mean. It's just in the content area we want to preserve those naturally underlined links, but pull away the text decoration everywhere else. I think that's a nice way to express that idea, especially because it's a relatively common idea to express. So that's at scope and using it in the niche idea of donut scope. Now, it doesn't have to be just one hole. You think of a donut with one hole in it, but perhaps our comments can have links in them too. So let's look at the HTML for a particular comment at the bottom of a page. We have this post by Alex Thompson here. Perhaps Alex's name is linked, or maybe it's not in the case of these. And maybe there's a link within here as well. Now, this is body content. This would be something I would apply content to, and I have here on the comment text, I've said that's content. Use that class there. So it's underlined, which is what we want. But it's our idea of like, where do we want the hole in the donut to be? Perhaps we call the entire comment content. In that case, what's going to happen? Alex's name is going to be underlined because this whole thing has become a donut now. As I select all of that is a hole in the donut. Whereas before, just this was a hole in the donut. So it gives you kind of a lot of control over how big the donuts are and how many holes there are in the content when you write a donut scope selector like that. So that's donut scope. Is it going to absolutely change how you write CSS forever? Maybe not, but it's nice to know it's there. CSS is better for having it, and it's a nice little niche feature. Next, we'll look at two different use cases for @scope that are also a bit niche and also a bit cool, frankly.